It is the new year, which is really weird, but also I feel like New Year's give me a lot of pressure to like make some huge change, be a different person, but it's just another day. It's a good thing, but I feel like it could bring a lot of pressure to others too, but it doesn't have to be that way. But anyways, today I wanted to talk about New Year's intentions, and I just wanted to share one intention that I have for the new year. I'm only sharing one because it's a pretty big thing, and I think itself is a very big thing for me, and it'll make sense once I start talking about it. But I was journaling yesterday, and honestly, I'm not a huge like New Year's resolutions person because I always tend to make these huge like goals and things that like can't even be achieved realistically in a year, and then I like feel frustrated at myself and things like that. But for some reason this year I was thinking a lot about this idea of intentions rather than goals, and I guess for me it's much easier for me to think of intentions than goals because goals are more measurable and like you can see the results, but intentions are more of like an inner thing. I hope everyone had a good New Year's celebration. I tried to think of a way to like better word this, but basically one of my 2025 intentions is to verbalize my needs. This is a very broad statement, so I will explain, but basically communicating effectively and assertively so that my needs are neglected. And I wrote so much because this reminded me of my people-pleasing tendencies, which is a problem, but I'll talk about that too. This is something I have been working on like in the past year too, but I guess I just wanted to make it a clear thing that this is something that I want to work on in this new year too. I think I grew up believing that not using my voice was serving others and also myself. Like I wanted to make everyone happy, and I thought that was more important even if it was neglecting my own needs. Of course, there are times where it's necessary to keep things to yourself, but there are also times where you are able to effectively communicate something that you want in a healthy way, and in a way where it doesn't have to stir any conflict or tension. And that's basically what I have been learning, and I don't know why, but it just took me so long to realize that I can say what I want to say without hurting someone else's feelings. And I can do this by using assertive communication. So basically, there are 3 different types of communication styles. The first one is passive, second one is aggressive, and the third one is assertive communication. And this is something that I studied myself. Passive communication is when someone cares too much about other people's needs, desires, and feelings that they neglect their own, and this often leads to them being taken advantage of, even if the other person is a well-meaning person, even if they have no intentions of hurting you. It's just that they are not aware of your needs since you are not communicating it. I definitely fall into this category. And then there is aggressive communication, which is kind of the opposite. It's when someone only cares about their needs, desires, and feelings, and then they neglect all of that of the other person. This often is very harmful because it comes off as domineering and disrespectful. And then assertive communication. And at first when I heard this, I was unsure if I wanted to fall into this category, because when I think of someone who is assertive, for some reason I just see it in a bad connotation. But I think being assertive is so healthy, and you need to be assertive in order to protect yourself at times. I think it just requires like a healthy balance. But anyways, assertive communication, this is just a label for the healthy style of communication where you recognize and consider both of your needs, desires, and feelings. There are even tips for assertive communication. The first is listening without interrupting. This already, I think, shows that this is a very healthy style of communicating because it requires actually being considerate of others, and listening without interrupting is a really good skill. The second tip is to clearly state your needs and wants. And then confident tone, body language, willingness to compromise, stands up for own wants, and lastly, good eye contact. These are all things that I definitely need to work on. I really struggle with like clearly stating my own needs and wants because, like I said, I do have people pleasing tendencies. I just don't want to hurt other people's feelings. Even deeper than that, I don't want to cause conflict or cause any tension. But I thought it was interesting that a tip is the willingness to compromise, but I think it is important because that also shows that in order to verbalize your needs in a healthy way, it does require some sort of sacrifice at times. And I think it helps to know that this is a tip because that shows that even if you do assert yourself, you are still being kind by considering others' needs. For someone like me, I really need to like sit down and write this out, dwell in it, and placing myself in that mindset that I need to assert myself sometimes in order to honor my needs and to overall have a healthy social life, because if I'm transparent about what I want, then others are also aware of that, and then there is just more overall transparency within the relationships I have. And I don't need to constantly feel like I have to hide myself or hide anything. And I think that will ultimately lead to stronger bonds with the people in my life. Also, doing this, it helps you set your boundaries and protect yourself, which is necessary. Because I think that growing up, I let people like cross my boundaries just because I wanted to make them happy. And it's not like it was their fault, because like if I'm not making people aware of my boundaries, then they don't know. And so that was me growing up. There were times where I really did get taken advantage of because I just went along with everything. And back then, I thought that was the right thing to do. Or actually, no. Back then, I knew that that was wrong because I was suffering from the consequences of being taken advantage of. But I think my fear of the other person not liking me was greater than me standing up for myself. And knowing that I do have a quiet personality, I know that it might be hard for me, but I think being quiet also doesn't mean that you can't voice your opinions or that you can't speak up for yourself. And I think it just comes back to the idea that speaking up for yourself doesn't have to be like a whole confrontational thing. It can just be you saying what you need in a healthy way. For myself at least, I need to disconnect the idea of verbalizing my needs from creating conflict, because for some reason I just keep thinking that like if I speak up for myself, the other person is gonna be mad or not like me or harm me or something like that. I don't know, this is just in my head. I recently came across a video from a creator that I like. Her name is Grace Moon. She was sharing how she has like a mantra for each year, and for the previous year her small mantra was, I'm going to do the hard things because I love myself. And when I heard that, I was like in shock, because these are such easy words, but it makes so much sense to why it's important to do what's difficult or even unnatural to us. There are things that come naturally to us that feel normal, but in the long run do harm us. So I think reminding myself that doing hard things is hard, but it is important because it is a way to love myself and take care of myself. I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of people who watch me might be similar to me, where we are naturally quieter and don't speak in public that much, but that really doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to speak up. I think it's important to know when to speak and when not to speak. And I feel like one of the strengths that we have is that we do tend to observe more. And so I think it could even be easier for us to know like when is a good time to vocalize our needs and when isn't. So that is a good thing. Going back to people pleasing though, I feel like this is a whole different story. Or no, it's related. But when I think about the root cause of my people pleasing, it always comes down to my fear of people and my fear that they will harm me if I don't do what they want. And yeah, I think that is the deeper underlying fear. I know that those fears are kind of irrational, but like it is like natural and I can't help it. So I think I just need to recognize it, let it come, and just let go of it when it leaves. But I think another thing I realized is that I ultimately also want to be liked by everyone, which I know is a common thing, but for that I just have to stop myself, because we all know that we cannot be liked by everyone. It's just not possible, and it's not what we were meant to do. But another way to deal with that is reminding myself that I am already loved by the people who do matter to me, and that is so important. Even if it may not be a lot of people in my life, there are still close friends and family who I know love me. And even beyond that, I am loved by God, like the God of this universe. This is just stuff I need to constantly dwell in and remind myself of. So shifting my mindset on the truth is what I need to do. Underneath all my, I guess, like unhealthy habits, there is an underlying fear or desire. Sometimes when I'm struggling with something, I like to ask myself, like, what is the underlying desire here? Like, for example, in school, I would be really stressed about projects and like presentations, and then I would ask myself, like, what is the underlying desire here? And it was ultimately that I wanted to be accepted and approved by my classmates or even my professor. And I came to that conclusion because I realized I try so hard so that my classmates can see that the work I've made is good and associate that with myself and accept me and view me in that way. Just being very honest here. But obviously I'm not like constantly thinking like, oh, I need to be accepted by these people, but it's like underneath my stress and fear is this desire to be accepted. And even with that, I try to shift my focus away from trying to be accepted by my classmates, because that's not why I go to school. Like, that's not even like a goal. It's not gonna be fulfilling. It's just not what I need. It is a desire, but it's not a need. And that desire is already fulfilled, but I'm just looking in the wrong places. If I really like strip down each layer of why I feel this way, it always comes down to something else. And I think this is a healthy way of stopping myself from being in that unhealthy cycle of fear and stress. My worth doesn't come from how people view me at school. My worth doesn't come from the work that I present or what I design or my profession or whatever I do in the future. Like, my worth does not come from the work that I do. It also does not come from what people think of me. Even if they do perceive me in a good way, that does not define me. When I was in high school, it's normal for everyone to be stressed about college acceptances in senior year. And I think for me too, I was stressed. But underneath that stress, I just wanted to be accepted, recognized, I guess, that I was a good student and that I did make use of my 4 years in high school and that I was like successful in that way. I just needed to be reminded that I was already so accepted and loved, not only by the people around me, but by the one who created me, by the God of the universe. And I think if I truly understood that at that moment, I wouldn't have cared so much about people, because people in comparison to like a greater being are so small. This is just speaking in terms of like my fear of people. Like, I just need to sometimes realize the gap between people and God. So yeah, The last thing I want to say is that I think the way I communicate also affects how I see myself and how I carry myself in other areas of life too. And being able to communicate your needs, it gives you the confidence to know that you can handle difficult situations. In a way, it helps you realize that you do have things in control. I know that we don't have everything in our control, of course, but one thing we can control is our voice, is what we say and how we say things. And like I said before, I do need to continually break the cycle of thinking that serving my needs is a bad thing or that it's a selfish thing. Rather than thinking of it in that way, I should know that it is a healthy way of carrying myself. And also, of course, it would be bad if I only cared about like my own needs and my own selfish desires, but I know that's not true. If I just take the time to know myself and know that I don't have intentions of neglecting other people's needs, then I know that I am not being selfish. If you also want the best for others, others should want the best for you. And if there are people who don't respect or consider my needs, then that's just them. There's nothing I can do about that. Just as long as I know myself and that I know that I am a considerate person, that I can be considerate while also considering my needs, I think that is a healthy way of approaching this. So this is something that I do want to practice in 2025, and I think it's always going to be a learning process of how to even like do this practically, but I think that will come with time. I'm also curious to know if anyone else has intentions like this for the new year or even goals. I would love to hear and be inspired by others. If you want to share, I do also wish you the best for this year. Thinking about the future can be scary, but we can also just take it a day at a time. Happy New Year. See you soon.